Now, Colin.
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned that Ninu Nana. You reviewed it this week.
I did.
What'd you give it?
9.4.
A 9.4. Amazing. That's what it says on the iTunes scale. We have a series of Ninokuni questions.
Okay.
I would say it's our topic of the week.
Topic of the week.
Are you prepared?
Yeah.
John writes in, hey guys, just wanted to say I love the show and to ask a Ninokuni question. Colin, I'm someone who has never been crazy about JRPGs, but your review of Ninokuni has gotten me excited. That being said, is there anything about Ninokuni that will appeal to fans of games with a more Western design? Keep up the awesome show, guys. Beyond.
I do want to point out, I think it's adorable that you say Ninokuni when it's Ninokuni.
I'll say what I want.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there is. I mean, so Ninokuni is very Japanese.
Did he say no or new?
I said,
said no.
Ninokuni.
I don't know. They all run together. It's all words to me.
I said it was a fun thing. I was enjoying it. I wasn't angry.
Well, now you're going to make me say no every time, so you ruined it for yourself.
Well, it's just the price I have to pay for accuracy.
Talk to John.
Yeah, so Ninokuni is very Japanese, but I think that certain things transcend every culture. If you like great stories, truly unique character, main character, protagonist, then I think that the game might be for you. I mean, with that said, if you don't like, battling a million times against monsters, if you don't like Pokemon-style gameplay where you're capturing creatures.
You don't like the mechanics of the
game. If you don't like equipping things on people, if you don't like side quests, if you don't like that, spending 40-plus hours with a game, as many as 80 hours if you want to do everything in the game, really do everything, then no, the game's not for you. But if you like good stories, you want to give it a chance. The thing about Ninokuni is that I think it's somewhat accessible. It looks more accessible than it is, for sure, because it looks
like an anime. It looks like a cartoon.
It looks like a kid's game, but it's not. So it's accessible in that way, but the only thing is that there's going to be a law of diminishing returns if you start with Ninokuni, because most JRPGs are not even remotely as good as it, especially this generation. That's why Ninokuni stood out to me so much, because I haven't played many JRPGs this generation compared to generations past, because there just aren't as many of them. And when I go to say, like, there have been games, especially from NIS or because we talk to NIS and we get games from them, where I'm like, I'm gonna review this. I'll review Atelier Marur. I'm gonna review Trinity Universe. I'm gonna. But then I put these games in for a little while, and I'm like, this game is just not fun. Like, for me, it's not for me. Like, someone else needs to review this game, because someone else has the sensibilities to review a JRPG that in the direction, the really hyper absurdly niche direction that it's gone. And even games like Final Fantasy 13 have gone in the other direction, where they're really accessible. And so I talk about that in the review a little bit, how we're kind of in the space in between, where I want a game that's not accessible, but I don't want a game. Yeah, exactly. I don't want a game that's Final Fantasy 13, and I don't want a game that's Trinity Universe. I want a game like old JRPGs that were fun, that were really great. And what's so stunning about Ninokuni is that it is that game. It is that game in spades, and it's truly special. And like I say, it's like one of the great PS3 exclusives.
Thing about it is that you keep talking about the story and about the characters, and that's what's got me excited, right? That's the same reason I love the Persona series, when, like, we always talk about how other JRPGs I can't get into because they're fantasy based, or this, they're back in Norse times with them Norse gods. But you know what I'm saying? It's one of those things. You've done a good job of appealing to my interest with it. So
yeah, I think it's. there are other questions, so maybe
can I ask you a question?
Sure.
How does it compare to Rainbow Moon? Would you say?
Rainbow Moon.
Well, Rainbow Moon's like a tactical RPG. I mean, Rainbow Moon's really special in its own way. I think Rainbow Moon is like incredibly deep. I'm not sure Ninokuni is that deep, but Rainbow Moon doesn't have a story or characters you give it about.
Okay.
It's about, if you like grindy RPGs, then Rainbow Moon's excellent. If you don't, then that's not going to be for you.
I mean, so it sounds like for me, Ninokuni would be my game, because I care. I mean, I actually love JRPG mechanics and grinding and everything, but I care more about having a good story, so.
All right, now John already wrote into beyond@ign.com with his question. Mm-hmm. Now John from Canada writes into beyond@ign.com with his question. Mm-hmm. He says, Colin, I have nothing but high praise for your review of Ninokuni.
Thank you.
Damn it, I screwed it up. For a game that wasn't on my radar, this review is one of my favorite reads in recent memory. As I slowly scrolled through the text, my heart began to race and a smile formed on my lips. I thought, quote, my God, Colin is about to give out a perfect 10, end quote. I was still ecstatic to find your final score, but the text seemed to tease a masterpiece. In your opinion, what could level 5 have done to propel Ninokuni to the coveted perfect 10? I said new again. Is it the Colin Campbell joke of Ninu Nana?
That's absolutely.
Yeah, that's what it is.
So I said this to a few people in the comments, and we've said it before, games don't start at a 10. So just because there's nothing implicitly super wrong with the game doesn't mean that it's a 10. Ni no Kuni could have done things to make it better. It could have been. I think that its linearity was a little much sometimes. There's side quests and errands and bounty hunts and all these things to keep you busy. But it would be cool to have a moment like in Final Fantasy VI, for instance, where you go, you meet up with Locke and Cyan and other characters, and you can literally go in any direction in the game. Like totally, you come back to the same point ultimately, but. What the hell is going on out there?
I don't know. There's some tour going on. People are taking photos of the class.
I keep smiling.
So Goldfarb keeps mugging for the camera like a goon, distracting Colin.
So there's no moment like that. I mean, there are certain things where you can do them in any order. You kind of end up in the same space. But so the game is a little bit too linear for me. But not in a bad way. It's just like that's one of the things where if maybe it was like open-ended more, then maybe it would have been a little bit better. But like, and there's like some obnoxious side quests. The voice acting for Oliver, especially the English voice acting for Oliver, who's the main character, is not great.
This was honestly me reading your entire review. This was what stood out to me as something I was curious about. When you say that it wasn't great, do you mean it's because he's just not a good actor, or she? I actually don't know.
It's a he.
Is it? No, but I mean the actor, him or herself, definitely male.
It's a boy. Yeah.
Okay, because sometimes women can play very convincing small kids, but Is he not a good actor? Is he not fit for the role? Is he
I think he was probably fit for the role. I just think that the voice acting around him is so strong sometimes, especially like Mr. Drippy Lantern Nose. The voice acting for him is excellent. Like Drippy's voice acting is awesome. Like
the English cast.
Yeah. It's awesome.
All right.
And a lot of the characters around, Swain and other characters in the game have really good voice acting. So when, some of the delivery of Oliver's delivery, it's good in the beginning when he's surrounded by like other kids and stuff. But when, I don't want to spoil it too much, but when you get, when you go to, another world, which is what the game's all about, that's what Ninokuni means, that you kind of run into more adults and more compelling voice acting, and it kind of stands out. I mean, towards the end, I was like, the antagonists in the game have like amazing voice acting. It just stood out as something that, like the White Witch's voice acting is awesome. So it was something that stood out to me.
You incur her wrath.
Would you recommend that people play in Japanese? It seems a shame to miss out on all the great English performances if there's just the one.
I played it in English.
Yeah?
But I'm one of those guys, like, and I know that's rare, that I'm one of those guys, even if I watch an anime, that I'd rather watch it dubbed. And I don't feel that way about like foreign movies or anything like that. I just feel that way specifically about anime. I don't know why. So
what's wrong with me?
So I mean, you can play as with the Japanese voice acting if you like.
Well, thank you.
But
I'm glad I got your approval.
Well, I mean, it's an option for you. I mean, a lot of games don't have that option.
Yeah.
The extraordinary thing about Ninokuni that I've been hearing, because the game will be available for download next week on PSN as well.
Interesting. People were asking about that.
Is so you can download it. Is that the game's apparently huge, like huge. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of data on the disc. Not to mention, I mean, nothing's compressed in the game. The game's gorgeous. Like one of the most beautiful games I've ever played. Like no doubt about it. Doesn't look realistic like The Last of Us. It does something different. It's a special game, and like I said, it's very early, and people were laughing at me when I was saying this, but I'm like, it's the game of the year to beat right now.
Oh wow.
Well, it's because Bioshock is now till March 27th.
Yeah, I mean, there are games that you expect they're gonna really go at it, like Bioshock and The Last of Us and Beyond Two Souls.
Now,
Grand Theft
DMC,
Auto.
Devil May Cry.
Can Wake Up Club compete? It's an app and not a game.
It could compete. But that's the game to beat right now in my estimation. When just looking at the ledger of games that are going to come
And
out,
it launches
there's only like
next week?
Yeah, it launches on Tuesday.
We're also missing like half the year. Like I mean, there will be
we're missing a lot more than half the year.
Yeah,
What I'm saying is when you look at the games and you assume, and assumptions are not always good to make, but you look at the games and you assume that certain games are just going to be excellent or they're going to be in the running. GTA 5 is a great example.
Yeah.
The Last of Us is obvious. I don't know how many of these games are going to hold a candle to the Ninokuni, to be perfectly honest with you.
Interesting. Now, you hit on there, you mentioned that it was linear. Mm-hmm. Charlie Gadsden writes in about that. Beyond.ign.com if you want to be part of the show. I've been thinking about how Colin said in his Ninokuni review, that the game is, quote, mostly linear, end quote. I tried to picture what that means while I watched the video review and screenshots, but there are many different examples of linearity in games. For example, at one time, Zelda games used to be considered wide-open games with lots to do. Nowadays, the same formula is considered to be more linear on the side of things. So, what do you guys consider a linear game? And Colin, what game is Ninokuni most like in terms of linearity?
Well, I don't agree that Zelda games, the same interpretation as Zelda games have gone from non-linear to linear. I think that the Zelda games have changed significantly. I think the original Zelda and Link to the Past, specifically on Super Nintendo, are massively non-linear games. especially when you get to the Dark World. There are like I think 8 or 9 different ways you can go through the Dark World dungeons. So like there's not like a first dungeon, second. But by the time you get to Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time, there's a more specific order you have to go through. So I think that Zelda games have changed. I don't think that the definition of linearity or non-linearity or linear Zelda games and non-linear Zelda games have changed. With that said, I think that the linearity is like Eternal Sonata. I think that's a great example. Like Eternal Sonata had side quests, especially there were people you would meet. Or in Final Fantasy IX is another good example where there were like Mughals that you would meet that you had to like connect them with letters and stuff like that. Like there are little things like that to kind of like give it an air of non-linearity, but you're going from point A to point B to point C to point D, just like in Eternal Sonata. And a lot of games are like that, but it's never like point A, point B, point C, point D1, T2, T3. Do them in any order. You end up at point E nonetheless. Then you go to F. Then there's G1, G2, G3, G4. You can do things like Final Fantasy VI to me, again, is an example of a game that does that perfectly, especially after the continent or the world is blown up after the floating continent. Spoilers. The game came out in 1994. So I think that it's somewhat like that. It also reminds me a little bit of like some Pokemon games, I guess, open up a little bit towards the end, and certainly like you have access with the dragon you get and ships, just like in any RPG convention where you can start exploring the world in any order you want. But there's always a next step in the story that's obvious, and you'll see why it's obvious when you start playing the game.
Charlie asked, what are other examples of linear games? I always say Uncharted. That's always the one, right? Like, there's not different paths to take in Uncharted. And Uncharted is telling you a very specific story, so it's a very linear game.
Yeah.
Point A to point B.
Bioshock. Like, you feel like you're exploring this whole all of Rapture, but like you're still going from one place to the next via bathysphere, and you can backtrack, but it's still just a linear thing.
Yeah, I was interpreting them as asking like RPGs of that, because I feel like anything that's not an RPG is typically linear.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right, 2 more questions. You ready, Colin? Mm-hmm. Jay Godowski. He says, great Ninokuni review. It's impossible, but if you could era adjust, would you say that this game would hang with the best of the PS1/PS2 RPGs of yesteryear?
Yeah, it would.
Wow. Yes.
Wow.
At the end of the, I think this is what told me this the most. At the end of the review, I say this too. The trifecta of great role-playing games in my mind are Final Fantasy VI, Wild Arms, and Tales of Destiny. And I love those games. I love them all. And I think Final Fantasy VI and Wild Arms are 10s. I don't think Tales of Destiny is a 10. But I didn't want it to end. And I don't feel that way about games that I even love sometimes, where I'm like, I'm ready to see the end of this game. I got to move on.
Yeah.
And especially when you're working towards a review and you know you have to like finish the game and you don't rush. You want to play. I always stress, and that I want to play the game the way it's meant to be played. So I never like just go through the quests. I like do all the side quests. I play it as I'm going to play it if I was just playing it for fun. The thing about Ninokuni was on Sunday night I beat it. I had to write the review the next day, and I would have. If the game kept going for 10 more hours, I would have loved that happened, even if it stressed me out more. That's what let me know that game's special. I don't think PS2 era RPGs are especially excellent. I think that SNES and PS1 eras is the golden era of RPGs. So I don't think saying it hangs with the PS2 RPGs is really saying anything. I think except for, there are games people love, Dark Cloud and Rogue Galaxy, for instance, which are both level 5 games. I know people love Final Fantasy X.
Persona 4.
Yeah, but the Persona games are on PS2. Dragon Quest VIII is another great example. But with the PS1 era, there are dozens of great RPGs, and I think it easily hangs with the Tales of Destinies and the Thousand Arms and
Thousand Arms.
Legend of Legaia
goodness.
and
totally forgot about that game.
Really excellent. Thousand Arms was an excellent game. It was an RPG and a dating sim. That was a really, really good game. So I think it hangs with those games for sure. It's prettier than all of them.
What about Chrono Trigger?
I don't think Chrono Trigger is as great as everyone thinks it is. I don't think a lot of people think it is.
You made me so angry. This is going to be a whole different conversation.
I think Chrono Trigger is a great game, but I don't. When people are like Chrono Trigger is the best of the best, I'm like, I don't agree with that.
It's probably my top 5 of all time.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that people like it. I think it's a fine game. It's an excellent game, but I don't like when I think about SNES era RPGs that are better. You can stumble upon Earthbound and Secret of Mana and Secret of Evermore and even ActRaiser, if you consider that kind of an RPG, and games like that, I think, and Final Fantasy IV and 6, and
all amazing games. But,
yeah,
but
I mean that was a good era.
Good.
That was a really good era. Phantasy Star too on Genesis. I mean, I think Phantasy Star 4 is better than Chrono Trigger. So, to each his own. I know I'm in the minority on that, but I don't. When people are like, is it as good as Chrono Trigger? Is it one of the greats like Chrono Trigger? I'm like, I don't think Chrono Trigger is really one of the greats. I think it's like up there.
Go for some man.
But it's not like in the top 5 for me RPGs.
Okay. Sure. Final Ninokuni question for you, and it's an easy one. Hi, my name is Jesus from Dallas, and I wanted to know if Colin is going for the platinum in Ninokuni.
Yeah, I will. I'm I'm not sure if I'm going to do it immediately. There are other games. I'm finishing Far Cry 3 right now. I want to get into Borderlands 2. I want to get some other things out of the way.
Are you going to play Borderlands 2 with people?
No.
That's a mistake.
Yeah, I'll play with you.
I want to play by myself.
I want to play with you.
I feel like you're not going to like it as much if you play completely by yourself.
I like Borderlands 1 by myself.
Okay.
Yeah, get this one. So, yeah, I'll get to it eventually.
That would have been really cool and topical if you'd done it like 3 minutes ago.
I was looking for it. The sound didn't play on the last one.
I got my 1,000 arms, so many arms. Finish the game with at least one.
You know what? By the way, what series I was thinking about too a lot was Lunar, and I'm wondering like if they're ever going to do anything with that. Working
They
design.
did the one where they Silver Star Harmony, right? Was the PSP one they redid?
Yeah, those are remakes though. And
I know.
But Eternal Blue and Silver Star Story are like. I don't know, those are such special games, man. I remember when Working Designs brought Silver Star Story and Eternal Blue to PlayStation. That was like such a special time for role-playing game fans.
What is that poster you just hit your arm?
They are the Left 4 Dead ones. Signed by Eric Clayton.
Oh.
So there you go. That's what we did with them. We took them down and threw them over here on top of a bunch of boxes of tapes that have been here forever.
And poop, according to one.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't dress this room up much for this video.
No, we didn't.
Nope.
Oh, yeah, we remember like the ambitious ideas we had about a big banner and it was going to look all great.
We got a banner. We just didn't bring it up. We got a next week.
Yeah.
This is a test run. Who knows if we'll have it posting these videos?
Yeah.
It's relying on me doing it. I have no time to edit. We'll see how.
Yeah, that's true.
Users lose all sense of reality and enter another world. Remember, do not underestimate the power of PlayStation.